President John Dramani Mahama has appointed Dr. Pakwesi Beidou as the Chief Executive Officer of the Komfo Anoti Teaching Hospital in Kumasi in the Ashanti region following the dismissal of Professor Ochre Adaimensa. Now, the decision was confirmed in an official statement dated April 30, 2025 and signed by Callistus Mahama, Secretary to the President. The letter directed the regularization of Dr. Beidou's appointment by the Ghana Health Service and Teaching Hospitals Act 1996, Act 525 as amended. The dismissal of Professor Adaimensa and the subsequent appointment of Dr. Beidou have stirred mixed reactions, particularly from the Ashanti youth. Now, what we do know is that the hospital itself has also welcomed the appointment of Dr. Beidou, Pakwesi Beidou, as the new Chief Executive Officer of the Komfo Anoti Teaching Hospital. Will stay with us here on Hot Edition. As we're learning as well, later on I'll tell you a number of the reassignments that the Ghana Health Service has undertaken in a major reshuffle. Stay with us. We've got details for you on that here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. But President John Dramani Mahama has issued a stern warning to his appointees to declare their assets by May 7 or consider themselves dismissed. Appointees who also failed to comply with an earlier directive to declare their assets by March 31 will forfeit 3 months' salary in addition to 1 month to be donated to the Ghana Medical Health Fund, simply known as Mahama Cares program. Now, the president gave the directive at the Jubilee House this afternoon when he launched the Code of Conduct for Government Officials. The code, which seeks to guide the conduct of ministers of state, heads of agencies, state governing boards and councils, spells out a clear guideline on ethical behavior, expectations for appointees, conflict of interest, financial disclosures and performance standards. It comes at a time when there are increasing calls to deepen governance in terms of good governance and also eschew corruption. Let's take a listen to exactly what the president said when he was launching this code of conduct earlier today.
Many of you have not seen the code of conduct yet. Don't have a heart attack when you receive your copy. Ministers of State, deputy ministers, members of the Council of State, presidential staffers, head of agencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. In my 120-day social contract with the people of Ghana, I pledged to restore discipline, integrity, and accountability into our governance. Today, we're taking an important step towards fulfilling that promise with the official launch of the Code of Conduct for Political Appointees. This code represents a bold declaration of the standards we must uphold as servants of the public. It reflects our commitment to build a government that is ethical, responsive, and worthy of the people's trust. Let me be clear. This document is not a ceremonial one. It is a living and enforceable framework that outlines what is expected of every individual appointed under this administration. Though the document often uses the term minister, it applies broadly to deputy ministers as well, to presidential staffers, to chief executive officers and their deputies, to members of the Council of State, to board members, and other political appointees within the executive arm of government. And I include myself. It applies to my vice president, myself, the president, the chief of staff, the executive secretary, all advisors, all of us are bound by this code of conduct. This is a government of shared responsibility, and there will be no sacred cows. Why do we need a code of conduct? Because we must build a new political culture, one that is rooted in transparency, humility, and ethical leadership. Ghanaians deserve leaders who serve with honor and put the public interest ahead of their personal gain. This code is designed to guide our actions and decision-making and to make clear the consequences that will happen when we fall short. Now let me highlight a few key principles and provisions of the code. All political appointees must serve the public with integrity and impartiality, must place the national interest above their personal interest, must avoid misuse of office or state resources, must declare and manage any potential conflict of interest, must eschew opulence, be accountable for every cedi or public money you spend, and be humble in service, measured in language, and respectful to citizens at all times. You are not in office to wield power. You are here to serve the people of Ghana. The second is conflict of interest. Any situation that creates a conflict between your personal interest and your official duties must be avoided or disclosed. This includes holding stakes in companies that deal with governments or with your ministries, using insider knowledge for your personal benefits, awarding contracts to entities that are connected to yourself or your close family. If you're a dormant partner in any business engaging with the government, even outside your ministry, you must disclose it in writing to this office. Not through a telephone call, not through a relative. You must submit an official declaration. Failure to do so will result in disciplinary action. Number 3, interest of friends and family. Public perception matters. You must avoid making decisions that benefit your relatives or your close friends. You must not recommend them for contracts or appointments. If your actions give even the appearance of bias, you compromise the integrity of your office. Number 4, gifts and hampers. We all know our cultural fondness for gifts, but we must now draw a clear line between appreciation and influence. Appointees are prohibited from accepting gifts or favors, especially from companies or individuals with interest in governmental decisions. If a gift is received during an official engagement and its estimated value exceeds 20,000 Ghana cedis, it must be declared. And upon leaving office, the gift must be surrendered unless expressly permitted to retain it by the President. As for hampers and gift items, no government funds, including internally generated funds, are to be used to purchase or distribute hampers. The only exception is modest gifts to staff as a reward for excellence or retirement. For government entities that must distribute hampers or gifts as part of their corporate commercial policy, express permission for the budgeted expenditure must be received from the Office of the Chief of Staff. Ministerial travel. All official or unofficial travel outside Ghana must receive, and the word is prior approval.
So that's the President there.
From the Chief of Staff's office. And after each official trip, a report must be submitted on the trip, and any impressed retired within 14 days after your return. Where government is footing the bill, the trip must be necessary, it must be budgeted for, and aligned with national priorities. Retroactive approvals will no longer be entertained. Prohibition on purchasing state assets. No political appointee under this administration is permitted to purchase state assets, whether land, vehicles, shares, or buildings, directly or indirectly. If you attempt to do so and you are found out, your appointment will be terminated. We are here to protect the national interest, not to help ourselves to the national purse. Sanctions for violation. The code sets out consequences for breach, public apology, from public apology to reprimand, to suspension, to resignation, or ultimately termination. Let me assure you that these sanctions are not cosmetic, they will be enforced. And I will not hesitate to act firmly and decisively, no matter who is involved. Kindly do not put me in a position where I have to make that drastic choice. Because when it comes to protecting the integrity of this government, I will not compromise. Citizen engagement and reporting. Accountability does not end at the walls of this room and in just one code of conduct. I invite the citizens of Ghana to play a role in monitoring compliance of this code. A portal will be created for the public to report suspected breaches with guarantees of confidentiality and impartial investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, what we launched today is more than a code. It is a declaration of intent. It is the foundation of a new ethos in public service, one that values ethics over expediency, duty over indulgence, country over self. We're here to serve and will serve with honor. On the 18th February 2025, I set a deadline of 31st March 2025 for all appointees who are taking office or being nominated at the time to declare their assets. An update provided by the Auditor General to my office indicate that some of you failed to meet that deadline. For all those who are appointed or nominated before 31st March 2025 and failed to meet the deadline, you are to forfeit 3 months of salary to be donated to the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, named after me, Mahama Cares. In addition to 1 month's salary that I've asked all appointees to donate to the Mahama Cares Trust Fund. So it means that those who omitted to declare assets by the date, you are paying 4 months' salary to Mahama Cares. However, if by close of day Wednesday, 7th May 2025, any of you still fails to declare your assets, count yourself automatically dismissed. The assets declaration regime is an important mechanism to check corruption and abuse of office, and it must be respected by all. My brothers and sisters, this is a very strict code, I must admit. But if we abide by this code, it will restore the faith of our people in our democracy. Strict compliance with this code will restore confidence in the political elite and help to consolidate our democracy. And so I expect all of you to do your best to abide by the code. Let us walk this path together with discipline, with humility, and with an unyielding commitment to the people of Ghana.
That's the President, John Dramani Mahama, there earlier today during the launch of the Code of Conduct for Government Appointees. And this is one that has generated a lot of conversation and different aspects, which we're going to be touching on here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We're also on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and on W 93.5 in Wa and beyond. Edem Senanu is the co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Mr. Senanu, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on Hot Edition.
Good evening.
First off, I want to start off from those who defaulted the March 31 deadline by the president to have their assets declared. Based on the president's own words today, the Auditor General has submitted a list which indeed does confirm that a number of government appointees did not comply with that 31st March deadline. The whole of April came to pass. They didn't declare their assets, and then we're in the month of May. The president says you're going to forfeit 3 months of your salary, and it's going to go into Mahama Cares Fund, and then I'm giving you up until May 6 to declare your assets. Some have asked that he should have just dismissed these people. Where does the pendulum swing for you?
Where does the...
What's your position on this particular this proposal? The position that those who hold that, look, after violating this directive, they should have just been sacked, as against being given a grace period for them to declare the assets.
Well, I think that anyone who is suggesting that the president ought to have cracked the whip immediately is just showing patriotism to say, look, Ghana needs better. And I think you have many Ghanaians who concur that, look, we've gone through several cycles of governments not apparently taking the cause of the people seriously. And so if our recent election of a president is anything to go by, we want a president who, when he says that I'll take action, will do so. Having said that, what we don't know is whether those who have not may have faced some administrative or other challenges that may have hindered their completion on time. So perhaps we should accept this as a first red flag, first warning to all his appointees, and that hopefully subsequently he will not take these things lightly. As it is, I think that those who are feeling that there ought to have been persons just that they have a legitimate reason to think that that should have been the action taken.
But the 3 months forfeiture of their salaries, a punitive measure enough, you would say?
I'm not quite sure how to place that. In my head, I'm wondering, should the president or somebody be benefiting from when people have not satisfied procedural matters? It seems to me that it's a bit problematic, but I can't place my finger on it. I'm not too sure whether that should even happen. I think that if we want to sanction, let's sanction and let that be the clear notice we are giving, without it being, raising other issues that may not actually give us the outcomes we are seeking to achieve. So I'm not too sure that this is one of those occasions where we should have taken advantage and leverage for the purpose of, as it were, capitalizing Mahama funds. Somehow, it doesn't sit completely well with me.
Well, what would have been the alternative that you would have proposed? I mean, if this doesn't sit well with you?
I think that, if we want to fund Mahama, it's a very important initiative in support of the health sector. Let's have an engagement with stakeholders, private sector persons who want to give. Let's do some fundraising. Let's citizens who, I'm not quite sure whether the first, the president himself said he was going to give, 6 months of his mandate, which was fine. But somehow, the idea that there are persons who should have been sanctioned, and somehow they seem to be left off the hook, this is rather the route we take. It doesn't seem to sit well with me. Perhaps I need to listen to the president again. Are they still being sanctioned when the money is taken?
Well, essentially, yes. The sanction is for as far as we do know now, the forfeiture of their salaries for the 3 month period that he mentioned, and then also the other measure is the grace period of up until May 6th, May 7th, in fact. But it said by end of day May 6th, which is tomorrow, they should have complied.
Forfeiture of their salaries for the months where they have not declared their assets.
Essentially, yes.
And is that the money that's going into Mahama cash?
Yes.
And that's where I probably need to reflect some more, but somehow it doesn't sit well with me. I think that if we are sanctioning persons under these circumstances, perhaps we should not be. If the persons have, you see, if somebody is giving a certain deadline and you've missed that deadline, I think that if the initial idea was to say that these persons should no more work because they don't seem like they have the kind of seriousness, they don't have they don't take these issues of making sure that the public space sees them as upright persons who are here to do good work. Rather than then seem to okay, we have extended the deadline, so you just make sure by that deadline you have done it, and meanwhile we'll take your money. I'm not quite sure whether that's the way to go.
Well, but let's then look into some highlights of this code of conduct for public officers and indeed government officials that was launched by the president today. One of it has to do with the ban on gifts and favors. Essentially, the president made the point that gifts received during official duties exceeding 20,000 must be declared unless permitted by the president. Conflict of interest, appointees must avoid or disclose any situation where personal interest could interfere with official duties, including owning stakes in companies that do business with government institutions, and also government spending. The code forbids the use of government funds for hampers or gifts items except for modest staff gifts recognizing excellence, retirement, and so on. Now, do these the details and what the president also put out tick the box for you from the anti-corruption perspective, from where you sit?
I think that ideally these are proposals that perhaps should have been made available to civil society and persons in the anti-corruption and good governance space to review and think through before they arrive at a conclusion. If you take the first one you mentioned, that gifts above 20,000 Ghana cedis, is that what you said?
Yes.
I mean, 20,000 is a lot of money. And if I wanted to be smart, then each time I am coming to you, I'll bring you 19,000. Then in 2 days, I come back with 19,000. I mean, so if I want to give you 100,000, I just make sure I stagger it, and then you don't have to declare it. Legally, unless there is some other. So I'm not quite sure, but 20,000 as a minimum threshold seems rather high to me. Typically, the value of what we say is a gift, which is of non-consequence, would typically not be as high as that. So, as a minimum threshold, already raises red flags for me. I think 20,000 is rather high. So, I don't know. I think that it would have been useful if there were engagements with anti-corruption, good governance experts to give some feedback on what they wanted to propose, and then we could give input before it was finalized.
Now, in the engagement, in what form should it have taken from where you sit?
Oh, I mean, once they had a draft code of conduct ready, even though I can tell you that we probably would have had two concerns. One, there's an existing code of conduct that the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice put together working with the Public Services Commission, which has been around. It's something that perhaps could be updated, but it is not for a lack of a national level code of conduct. And so we probably would point that there exists a code of conduct that could have been leveraged, even though we know that in the first tenure of President Mahama, he also had a code of conduct for his staff. But I think the value of a code of conduct is to the extent that all of us subscribe to it, which would lead us to the second thing we would have pointed out, that the Conduct of Public Officers Bill is a much more critical tool that ought to be finalized, passed into law, and utilized, because then all of us can hold you accountable and can take you to court. So there's a sense in which this ticking of the box doesn't solve anything. Indeed, where we find ourselves as a country, we should not just be ticking boxes. We should be much more focused on achieving outcomes that move this country forward. So as soon as you mentioned tick the box, I said myself, I was shaking my head. That's not what we want our governments to do. We are happy that Mr. President sees this as an important issue, code of conduct. We would have been much happier if the Code of Public Officers Bill was looked at. Let's tighten the aspects we all believe need to be tightened, and let's pass the bill and have something in law. And if I were there at that engagement, I would say, Mr. President, can you rather give us a timeline? I mean, this is a good start. Won't be gradual. It was in your manifesto. But that does not get Ghana where it needs to go. Give us a timeline for passing the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. Then we know we are on track.
So what has been launched today cannot, in essence, replace the conduct of public officers
No,
bill.
it cannot.
That act, the that you want Parliament to look into, it cannot do that.
Absolutely.
But then
it does not.
Right.
It may serve the manifesto purposes, and we are happy they had this in their manifesto. At least it shows that they see this as important. But as a country, trust me, there will be nobody in the anti-corruption and good governance space who is not going to say, but what's happening to the couple? The last we had heard about it, I know the former AG, and also that's one of the positives, I'll say. I know he was able to get it to cabinet, and then cabinet refused to move. So the previous Attorney General was able to get us to the point of cabinet. Now we should have that reviewed, finalized, and passed. It should move back from wherever it is to Parliament for it to be passed. This code of conduct, which is simply an executive policy, is not justiciable. It's not something we can take to court and hold people accountable the way we want to. The president could, because it's his. That's if he's so minded and somebody brings to attention. But if you really want good governance, please, he needs to give us some timelines. And we are likely all to be pointing this out to him and the NDC government, that this doesn't quite match up to our expectations at the moment.
I see, but then if you look at the code launched today, I mean, you say it ticks a few boxes, it's a good start, but then again, it shouldn't replace the code of public, the code of conduct for public officers. But then again, there's another concern about the implementation of this particular code that has been launched today. The president says citizens should also monitor the compliance. Beyond citizens monitoring the compliance, what measures do you expect to be put in place so as to ensure that public officers, government appointees, indeed comply with the details of this code that has been launched today?
I would not want to replace the conduct of public officers bill with this code of conduct. Alfred, maybe I'm not saying it clearly enough. We are happy.
No, I think you made that distinction quite clear. To the extent that you said that this was
I don't even
a step.
want to start saying citizens should be using it. Yes, if we see, we will say. But let's give us a timeline for passing the conduct of public officers bill. We are happy, Mr. President, but give us a timeline for passing the conduct of public officers bill. That's comprehensive. That covers all the issues we are concerned about. And all of us, civil society, citizens, will be on board. And I think that this country needs to move much faster. So we are happy, but Mr. President, let's do much more.
And in much more, talk about the verification and publication, which has been one of the major demands you make.
Absolutely, yes. So that then access declaration becomes fit for purpose. And that's part of the tightening up of the current conduct of public officers bill. I'm not quite sure they'll talk about verification and publication in this, and I've not read it, so that's why I can't speak to it. I probably will do that overnight. But I doubt that they have verification and publication in it. So are they going to ask their officers to publish? Will it be on a website the way we want it so that anybody in Ghana can go and cross-check? I mean, I have a feeling that this will not be as comprehensive as taking the COPO, completing it, passing it into law, and let's all begin to monitor. That way would have made substantive progress.
And you talk about timelines for you, civil society as well, because this was one of the demands you made and you're still making, that the conduct of public officers bill be passed into law. What specific timelines do you have?
Urgently, if even within the next 3 to 6 months, they can work on it, make it a priority of Parliament, leverage what they have just done and say, not just this, but we are going to work together with the Parliament of Ghana to pass into law over the next 6 months, the COPO. That definitely would bring us where we want to be as a country.
And we shall have to find out whether the work done by the previous parliament, as we do know, is either going to be continued or the entire process will have to start again, as we know that...
No, in the case of the COPO, what it was the government sponsored, so the AGs had worked on it, brought people on board, then went to cabinet. It was not going to move from cabinet to get through the internal legislative processes of parliament. So whichever state it is in, with all the consultation that was done, it's a good state to just have another stakeholder engagement to, enhance it. Is there anything else we want to do? Finalize it, get cabinet to endorse, and move it to parliament. And I'm sure that if they had to do stakeholder engagement and get cabinet's approval to move it to parliament, that could be done within a month, and then allow parliament to use its processes to try and finalize it. I think a 6 months horizon is sufficient to get this out of there. It would stand as one of the most serious achievements of this government if they apply themselves to it.
I do appreciate your time, Senanu. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much, Alfred.
Edem Senanu is the co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. They're still live here on Hot Today.